The ocean world of Varan 9 was usually quiet at night. The waves moved in slow rhythm, the wind hummed through the rusted railings, and the lighthouse stood tall on its lonely island like an old guardian. Evan Hawley, the only human living there, liked this silence. It was the kind of silence that helped a man think. But tonight, everything felt wrong. Evan stepped outside and looked toward the horizon. The sky was dark, but not with normal storm clouds. These clouds glowed faint blue, almost like they held lightning inside their skin. The waves below were louder, deeper, as if something huge was moving beneath the surface. He had worked on this lighthouse for 7 years, and he had never seen the ocean behave like this. He checked the sensors along the outer wall. All of them showed strange readings. The wind pressure was too high. The water temperature was rising. Even the magnetic field around the island was shifting. He frowned. Storms were common here, but not storms that seemed to come from deep space. A sharp sound cut through the air. It was the emergency bell from the lighthouse tower. Evan ran inside, climbing the stairs 2 steps at a time. The screens flickered. The power grid was unstable. The tower lights dimmed and brightened like a heartbeat. When the lighthouse behaved like that, it meant something was interfering with its energy. He reached the top floor and grabbed the railing as the entire structure rocked. The ocean was now glowing in streaks of blue, like someone had poured light into the water. The wind carried faint whispers. It almost sounded like voices. Evan tried to ignore it, but the sound grew clearer, like a call coming from far out in the waves. He raised the binoculars and scanned the horizon. At first he saw nothing but glowing water and clouds that twisted unnaturally. Then he saw something else. A small shape floating between the waves. It did not move like debris or a boat. It seemed alive. The shape flickered with gentle blue light each time the waves lifted it. Evan's heart tightened. Someone was out there. He didn't think. He just moved. He raced down the stairs, grabbed the emergency rope, and ran toward the lower dock. The wind pushed him sideways, and the rain slapped against his face with painful force. The lighthouse groaned as the tide rose higher, reaching the rocks faster than normal. When he reached the edge of the dock, he saw it again. The shape was drifting closer. The glowing marks on it pulsed softly. Evan leaned forward, straining his eyes. Then the next wave rolled, and he froze. It wasn't a human. It was a woman, but her skin was silver blue. Her hair floated around her like long strands of shining seaweed. Strange patterns glowed on her arms and neck. She looked peaceful, but she was completely unconscious, her body weak, her breathing shallow. Evan didn't have time to think about what species she was. The next wave was already rising behind her. If he didn't act now, the storm would take her away. He tied the rope around his waist, braced himself, and stepped into the freezing water. The wind roared like a living creature. He pushed forward, fighting the waves, grabbing her arm just before the water swallowed her again. Her skin felt warm, almost electric. With all his strength, Evan pulled her back toward the dock. Each step was a battle. The storm pushed him back, the water pulling at his legs like hands trying to drag him under. When he finally reached the dock, he lifted her into his arms and carried her to safety. Then a massive wave slammed into the rocks behind them, exploding in bright blue foam. Evan stared at it, breathless. The wave didn't move like water. It curled upward, almost reaching for him, as if the ocean itself wanted her back. He carried her inside the lighthouse and laid her on a cot near the heater. For a moment, he simply watched her, unsure what to do. She was not like any alien species he had read about. The glowing patterns on her skin pulsed slowly, almost like a whisper of light. Then her eyes snapped open. She gasped, grabbed Evan's wrist, and whispered. A single word, soft, fearful, and unfamiliar. A word that felt more like a warning than anything else. Heroin. Evan froze when the alien woman whispered that strange word. Her voice was soft, but the fear inside it was sharp. Her hand, still gripping his wrist, trembled with weak energy. He slowly placed his free hand on her shoulder to calm her, speaking gently. "It's okay. You're safe here." "You're inside a lighthouse," he said. She blinked slowly, trying to understand. Her eyes were bright silver, almost reflecting the light around her. She tried to sit up but winced in pain, so Evan helped her rest against the pillows. The glowing patterns on her skin pulsed faster, like they reacted to her fear. He fetched a blanket and a medical scanner. The moment he placed the scanner near her, the device flickered and shut off. Whatever energy moved through her body was interfering with it. "Great," Evan muttered. "You're full of electricity or something." The woman tilted her head, watching him with curiosity. She touched the broken scanner with her fingertips, and a spark of blue light ran through it. The device turned back on for a second before dying again. Evan stared at it, stunned. "You can control energy?" he asked. She didn't understand the words, but she understood his tone. She gave a small nod, although her face showed exhaustion. She was weak. Too weak. He needed to help her recover. Evan brought a bowl of warm water. The moment he placed it near her, her skin brightened. He looked at her in surprise. She gently placed her fingers in the water, and the glowing patterns on her arms lit up like tiny rivers of light. "So water helps you," Evan said quietly. "Good, that's something." She gave him a tired but grateful look. He tried again. "To communicate," he pointed at himself. "Evan." She watched his gesture, then pointed at her own chest. "Lyra," she whispered. The name sounded like a wave breaking on sand, soft and musical. Evan repeated it. "Lyra, okay." A small smile appeared on her lips, but it quickly faded when she heard a low rumbling sound outside. Lyra's body tensed. She looked toward the window with wide, terrified eyes. The glowing markings on her skin dimmed as if hiding. Evan turned and listened. The storm was still raging, but underneath the wind and thunder, there was another sound. Something deep, something alive. He moved closer to the window and peered out. The ocean surface rippled with rings of bright blue light, like giant circles of energy spreading outward. Something massive was moving below the waves. He returned to Lyra. "What is out there?" "Is someone chasing you?" She struggled to sit up again and pointed toward the door. Then she placed her hand on her heart and shook her head. She was not telling him to go outside. She was telling him that whatever was out there was not friendly. Lyra closed her eyes and raised her hands in the air. Soft light flowed from her fingertips, forming a faint shape. Evan leaned forward. She was drawing something with light, an outline in the air. A creature dotted head, long, sharp limbs like coral. Its eyes glowed like hot metal. Its body looked like moving water, but held together by some unseen force. Evan's heart thudded. "That thing was in the storm?" he asked. Lyra nodded, her eyes filled with fear. He swallowed hard. "And it's searching for you?" Another nod. The radio behind them suddenly crackled. Evan turned quickly. The usual static was replaced by strange sounds, low, echoing calls like whales singing, but deeper and more complex. The hairs on his arms stood up. Lyra covered her ears, trembling. The radio frequency was hurting her. He turned it off immediately. "Is that them?" he asked. She pointed at the radio, then at herself, then shook her head sharply. They were not calling to her. They were tracking her energy. Evan suddenly understood. "Your light," he whispered. "Your energy. They can follow it." Lyra looked down, ashamed, as if she felt guilty for bringing danger to his island. Evan knelt beside her. "Hey, this is not your fault. You didn't choose to be caught in that storm." She looked up, eyes shining with gratitude. A loud crash shook the lighthouse. Evan rushed to the window. Something enormous brushed past the rocks. The water glowed brighter as giant shadows moved. Beneath it, the storm was not calming. It was circling. The creatures had found the island. Evan turned to Lyra. Then we fight this together. Her dim light flickered, then grew a little brighter like hope returning. The storm grew louder as the night deepened. The lighthouse walls shook again and again, as if the sea was knocking at the door and asking to be let in. Evan stood near the window, watching the glowing waves slam against the rocks. Each wave carried bright blue trails, like something was stirring the water from below. Lyra sat on the cot, her eyes fixed on the window. Her glowing patterns pulsed fast and uneven, showing her fear. She knew what those lights meant. Evan could see it on her face. "What are they?" he asked softly. Lyra looked down at her hands. She raised them slowly, and small streams of blue light appeared between her fingers. She shaped the light into rough outlines again. 3 creatures, long and thin, with glowing eyes and sharp limbs that curled like broken branches. The light image flickered as she trembled. Evan stared. "So there are 3 of them?" She shook her head. The image changed. Behind the 3 glowing shapes rose a much larger figure. Its body was massive, its glow brighter than the others. It looked like a mountain rising out of the sea. Evan's stomach tightened. "There's a bigger one?" Lyra nodded. She pointed at herself, then at the huge light shape. Evan understood. The big creature was the one truly hunting her. Before he could say anything else, a deep rumble traveled through the floor. The glass in the window vibrated. Something enormous had just moved beneath the lighthouse. Evan stepped out onto the metal platform outside to see more clearly. Cold rain hit his face. The sky flashed with blue lightning. He looked downward and felt his breath stop. The ocean just below the platform was glowing. Not from lightning, but from dozens of eyes staring up at him from under the surface. Eyes that burned like hot metal. Eyes too large to belong to normal animals. Evan backed away. "They're right below us." Lyra crawled toward him, pulling herself to the doorway. Her strength was fading fast. She placed her hand against the floor, and the patterns on her skin dimmed. Her light was too weak to scare the creatures away now. Evan rushed to help her. "Don't push yourself. Stay back." But Lyra grabbed his arm tightly and pointed repeatedly at the ocean. She was trying to warn him. She spoke softly, her voice shaking. "Herlin, Herlin." He didn't understand the word, but hearing it again sent chills down his back. It sounded like the name of the creatures. Or maybe the name of the hunting storm itself. Another heavy thud hit the rocks. Evan felt the entire lighthouse tilt slightly. If the creatures kept doing that, the foundation could crack. The storm outside somehow felt alive, like it was being controlled. He needed information. Something, anything that could help him understand. Evan hurried to the storage room and grabbed an old scanning device, one that didn't rely on the same power frequencies the lighthouse used. When he brought it close to Lyra, the device began to beep, picking up strange energy signals around her. He scanned the window next. The device screamed with warning. "Energy levels off the charts," Evan muttered. "Whatever's out there is creating its own field." The radio suddenly switched on again by itself. The same whale-like tones returned, deeper, more urgent. Lyra covered her ears again, her face twisting in pain. Evan slammed the radio off with his hand. "They're using sound to track you, aren't they?" Lyra nodded weakly. "But why you?" Evan asked. Her hands shook as she raised them again. With the little strength she had left, she created another light shape. This time the shape was of herself, glowing brightly. Then she created the shape of one of the creatures. The creature went toward her light and swallowed it. Evan's eyes widened. "They feed on your energy?" Lyra pressed her hand to her heart and nodded. Her species was a source of energy the creatures needed. She had escaped them. But the storm they rode had followed her from deep space. Another crash shook the lighthouse, harder than before. Evan grabbed hold of the railing to stay upright. Water splashed up onto the platform outside, glowing with blue sparks. "We can't stay." "At the lower level," he said. "They'll break through." He lifted Lyra in his arms. She was light, almost weightless like the sea foam she resembled. Her body glowed faintly, reflecting her weak breathing as he carried her up the stairs. Another rumble echoed below. Something huge was climbing the rock wall. Evan rushed faster, reaching the upper floors just in time. He set her down gently near the lighthouse control panel. She looked up at him with tired eyes, but she still touched his arm lightly, as if to thank him. Below them, the storm roared. The creatures circled the island. And somewhere in the deep, the gigantic alpha creature began to rise. The tide storm was not done. It was only beginning. The upper floor of the lighthouse was quieter, but only for a moment. The storm outside still roared like a living monster. Evan helped Lyra sit near the main control panel, her breathing slow and weak. Her glowing patterns flickered like fading stars. Evan checked the lighthouse systems. The power grid was unstable, but the main beam still worked. He stared at the large crystal lens, the heart of the lighthouse, and an idea slowly formed in his mind. The creatures outside hunted through energy. They followed light. They followed sound. They followed whatever Lyra carried inside her body. Maybe he could confuse them. He turned to Lyra. "Your energy reacts with the light, doesn't it?" She blinked, unsure how much English she understood, but she gave a small nod. She raised her hand toward the lighthouse beam. Even though the light was off, the patterns on her skin reacted, glowing brighter as if they felt the power inside. The crystal. Evan activated the manual controls. The beam flickered to life, bright white at first, then warm yellow. The storm winds shook the tower, but the light cut through the darkness like a blade. When the beam swept across Lyra, something strange happened. The lighthouse light changed color. It shifted to her blue. The entire room glowed with it. The controls buzzed. The storm outside answered with a deep rumble. Evan stepped back. "What was that?" Lyra placed her palm against the glass lens. Her touch created a ripple through the light, turning the beam into a moving wave pattern. The moment the beam hit the ocean, the creatures reacted. A loud screech rose from below. Evan ran to the window. The three smaller tide creatures recoiled, twisting underwater as if the new frequency hurt them. He watched in disbelief as they pulled back from the lighthouse, diving deeper into the sea. "You're pushing them away," he said in shock. "Your energy can tune the light." Lyra, exhausted, lowered her hand. She coughed, her glow fading. It took effort for her to even raise her head. Evan helped her sit upright again. But then, a chilling sound rose from the sea, a low, slow pulse that made the entire building shudder. The glass cracked slightly. Evan flinched. This was not from the smaller creatures. The alpha creature had answered. The wall shook again, this time harder. The lighthouse groaned under pressure. Evan quickly shut off the beam before the equipment overloaded. Lyra looked relieved but also afraid. "We can't use the light too much," Evan said breathlessly. "It hurts them." "But it hurts you, too," she nodded, placing a hand over her heart. Each time she used her energy, she grew weaker. Evan checked the monitors again. The sea was glowing brighter, forming large circular patterns around the island. The creatures were repositioning. They were planning an attack. Lyra suddenly touched Evan's arm, pointing at one of the switches. Evan frowned, following her gesture. She pointed again, more urgently, then toward the big crystal lens. "You want me to change the frequency?" he asked. She nodded, though her breath trembled. He switched to manual tuning, adjusting the light frequency. When he found the right setting, Lyra raised her hand again, only a small movement, and her glow responded. The beam changed into a deep blue spiral of light. When it swept across the ocean, the storm seemed to hesitate. The wind shifted direction slightly. The smaller creatures screamed beneath the waves. Evan saw their shapes retreat even farther. "It's working," he said. But before he finished speaking, the radio turned on by itself again. But this time, the sound was not a call. It was a warning. A deep vibration that rattled the metal floors. Lyra grabbed his sleeve tightly. The alpha creature was close. The lighthouse shook again, stronger than before. A sharp crack echoed from below. Evan rushed to the railing and looked down. A massive shadow rose beneath the water, bigger than the lighthouse itself. Blue lightning crawled across its body. The surface of the sea bulged upward like something was about to break through. Lyra whispered the word again. "Harlan," her voice filled with dread. Evan swallowed hard. "So Harlan is the big one." She nodded weakly. The ocean suddenly exploded upward. A huge limb struck the rocks, making the entire lighthouse tilt. Evan grabbed the panel to steady himself. Water sprayed through the broken window, glowing like liquid light. Lyra fell forward, too weak to stay upright. Evan caught her before she hit the floor. He looked into her frightened eyes. Then he looked out at the rising Leviathan. The light had pushed the creatures back, but now it had drawn the largest one straight to them. The lighthouse shook so hard that dust fell from the ceiling. Evan held Lyra close, trying to keep her steady as the giant shadow outside rose higher from the glowing sea. The storm twisted around it like a cloak, blue lightning wrapping its body in moving light. The alpha creature Harlan was finally here. Evan forced himself to look through the broken window. The creature was enormous. It towered over the lighthouse like a living mountain made of water and storm energy. Its limbs were long and sharp, glowing with the same blue light Lyra carried inside her. Its eyes burned brighter than all the others he had seen. Harlan was not searching anymore. It had found what it wanted. Lyra trembled in Evan's arms. Her glow flickered weakly, only a faint blue shimmer left. She whispered something in her language, her voice soft and full of fear. Evan wished he could understand. He wished he could tell her everything would be fine. But the creature outside made those words hard to believe. Another heavy impact shook the tower as Harlan slammed a massive limb against the rocks. The entire structure leaned, groaning under pressure. Evan rushed to the control panel, but the power indicators were red. The lighthouse was close to shutting down. He knew they had only one weapon, the light beam. He also knew using it might kill Lyra. "Stay here," he said gently, placing her back on the cot. But Lyra grasped his hand with surprising strength. She shook her head, making it clear she did not want him to face the storm alone. Her silver eyes were soft, pleading. Evan knelt beside her. "I know," he whispered, "but you're too weak. The light drains you. If we try again, it could stop your heart." She touched her chest, then placed her hand over his. A silent message. She was willing to risk it. She did not care about her life as long as Harlan was stopped. Evan swallowed hard. He could not let her die. Not after she came so far to escape. He stood and looked at the generator panel. The lighthouse was old, the systems fragile. But there was one thing he had never used, a manual overload switch. It could charge the beam to maximum power for a few minutes. It was designed for rescue ships, not for fighting giant storm creatures. Overloading it would blast a signal strong enough to push back anything that used energy to hunt. But it could also make the generator explode. Thunder roared outside. A huge wave hit the lighthouse, spraying glowing water through the open cracks. Evan wiped his face and made his choice. "We're doing this," he said. He opened the protected panel and pulled out the red handle. Warning alarms screamed across the room. Lights flickered. Lyra stared, understanding instantly what he was attempting. Harlan moved closer, its glowing limbs scraping the rocks. A terrible sound echoed through the storm, a deep, vibrating roar that rattled Evan's bones. The creature leaned forward, placing one massive limb on the lighthouse wall. The stone cracked, spreading with spider web patterns. They had seconds left. "Lyra!" Evan called. She forced herself to stand. Her legs shook. Her breath trembled. She held onto the wall for support, each step costing her energy. The glowing patterns on her body flickered like dying fireflies. She reached the beam's crystal lens and placed both hands on it. The room instantly filled with blue light. Evan shielded his eyes. He could feel the temperature change. The air became charged, buzzing with power. He pulled the overload switch. The lighthouse beam exploded with brilliance. Spiral of blue and white light blasted into the storm, slamming into Hurlin's enormous body. The creature screamed a sound so loud the entire island vibrated. It tried to pull away, but the beam pinned it like a giant harpoon made of light. Lyra cried out in pain, her glow dimming rapidly. Evan rushed to her. "Hold on!" he shouted. "Just a little longer." Hurlin thrashed, sending waves so high they hit the tower windows. The lighthouse leaned dangerously. The metal structure groaned like it might snap in half. But the beam kept firing, stronger and stronger. Evan grabbed Lyra's hands, placing his own over them. The moment he touched her, her glow brightened slightly. Their combined energy pushed through the lens, strengthening the beam. Hurlin screamed again. Cracks appeared across its glowing body. Its limbs curled inward. The storm around it began to twist wildly, turning into a spinning vortex. But Lyra collapsed to her knees. Her energy was nearly gone. Evan held her tightly, refusing to let her fall. The beam flickered as her strength drained, but he refused to release her hands. "Stay with me," he begged. "Just a few more seconds." Outside, the massive Hurlin shuddered as the light tore through it. The storm spun faster. The sea glowed brighter. And then Hurlin began to break apart. The creature dissolved into hundreds of glowing particles, carried away by the storm winds like dust made of blue stars. The danger was fading, but Lyra was barely breathing. Evan held her close, tears mixing with rain. The battle had ended. But he did not know if she had enough strength left to live long enough to see the calm. The storm did not end immediately after Hurlin broke apart. Instead, the sky shook with leftover energy, as if unsure whether to release its anger or continue the fight. The lighthouse groaned under the pressure. Half the windows shattered, the metal rails bending from the force of the wind. Inside, Evan held Lyra close. Her skin glowed only faintly now, almost fading into darkness. Her breathing was slow, so slow it frightened him. He gently tapped her cheek. "Lyra," he whispered, "stay with me, please." Her eyelids fluttered weakly. She tried to speak, but only a whisper of air escaped. She was alive, but barely. Evan carried her up to the safest corner of the upper floor and laid her on a blanket. The room smelled of burnt wires and salt water. He checked the generator. Sparks flew from broken cables. The overload had pushed the system to its limit. The beam had saved them, but also nearly destroyed the lighthouse. Outside, the glowing remains of Hurlin scattered across the sky like drifting stars. But Evan's relief did not last long. The smaller tide creatures began to move again. Without their leader, they seemed confused, but not gone. They circled the island with restless energy. Evan clenched his jaw. He couldn't fight another battle. Not with Lyra this week. Not with the lighthouse near collapse. He looked at her again. She lay still, her hands curled slightly, the glowing markings barely visible. She had fought with everything she had. She had risked her life. And she had done it to escape monsters that wanted to use her like fuel. Evan felt anger burn inside him, not at Lyra, but at the creatures and the storm that hunted her. He stood, his fists tight. "I won't let them take you," he said. He turned back to the control panel. The beam was weak, but still functional for a short time. If he could adjust it again, without draining Lyra, maybe he could scare away the remaining creatures. He studied the settings. trying to understand the strange frequency Lyra had helped him create. The patterns she made with her hands, the way the light resonated with her energy. He tried to copy it. The beam flickered blue for a moment, then died. Another attempt. Another failure. He slammed his fist onto the panel. "Come on!" Lyra opened her eyes slightly at the sound. Her voice was soft and fading. "Evan!" He rushed to her side. "Don't move. Save your strength." She shook her head. With effort, she lifted her hand and pointed toward the top of the lighthouse. She whispered a single word. "Together." Evan swallowed hard. She was telling him he couldn't do this alone. She tried to stand, but her legs collapsed beneath her. Evan caught her before she fell. "No," he said softly. "You're too weak." But she shook her head again. Her eyes, although dim, shined with determination. She wanted to finish this. He lifted her gently, holding her in his arms as he climbed the stairs to the highest platform of the lighthouse. The wind hit them hard. The night sky was torn open, with glowing clouds and swirling blue energy. The smaller tide creatures circled the lighthouse like silent shadows out at the top. Evan put Lyra down carefully. She placed her hands on the railing, using it to stand. Her glow flickered, then brightened just a little, as if the height, the air, or the storm itself awakened something inside her. Evan activated the emergency manual beam. The crystal lens sparked, waiting for energy to guide it. Lyra reached out and touched the lens. Her whole body trembled. Evan placed his hands over hers, steadying her. Together, they pushed their combined energy into the crystal. The beam ignited. A massive wave of blue-white light exploded into the storm, stretching across the sky like a rising sun. The lighthouse shook violently. The air crackled. Evan felt electricity run through his bones, but he held on. The tide creatures screamed and scattered in all directions, diving deep into the sea. The light burned through the storm clouds, breaking apart the last of Harlan's energy. For a moment, everything was bright. A single moment of pure, blinding peace. Then the beam faded. The storm died almost instantly. The sky turned dark and calm. The wind stopped. Lyra collapsed. Evan caught her again, lowering them both to the floor. Her eyes were closed. Her glow had vanished completely. "Lyra." "No." His voice cracked. He pressed his ear to her chest. There was a heartbeat, soft, faint, struggling, but alive. Evan held her tightly, tears falling onto her dim skin. The battle was over. The island was safe. The creatures were gone. But he did not know if Lyra would ever wake again. Asterisk. The sky over the tiny island finally cleared. For the first time in many hours, the storm clouds were gone, leaving soft morning light spreading across the ocean. The waves were calm again, as if the sea itself had fallen asleep after a long and violent cry. Evan sat on the upper floor of the lighthouse, holding Lyra in his arms. Her glow had completely faded. Her skin was pale silver, almost cold. He brushed her hair away from her face and whispered her name, "Lyra. Please wake up." But she did not move. He checked her breathing again. Still there, weak, thin, almost a whisper, but alive. She had fought beyond her limits. She had given everything to save him and the island and herself from the creatures that hunted her. Evan refused to let her sacrifice end like this. He lifted her and carried her down to the lower level, where the sunlight reached through the cracks in the walls. The warm light touched her skin, but her glow did not return. She needed more than sunlight. She needed something from her own world. Evan looked around at the glowing water puddled on the floor from the storm. He remembered how her markings lit up the moment she touched water. He filled a metal bowl and brought it to her. He dipped her fingers into the water. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a single blue spark flickered on her wrist. Evan's heart jumped. "Come on, Lyra, please. Stay with me." Slowly, faint lines of light began to return on her arms. Her breathing grew a little stronger, but she was still unconscious. Evan stayed beside her for hours, adding warm water, adjusting her position, keeping her hands in the bowl. He spoke to her softly, even though she could not respond. "You're safe now. Harlan is gone. The others ran away. The storm can't hurt you anymore." The lighthouse was quiet. Only the wind whistled through the broken railings. The sea outside sparkled gently like nothing terrible had happened at all. By midday, Lyra's glow had returned enough to cover her arms and shoulders, though still weak. Evan carefully lifted her into a chair, letting her sit upright. She swayed slightly, her head falling forward, but then she breathed in deeply. Her eyes opened. Evan froze, afraid to hope. Her silver eyes looked confused at first, then found him. The faintest smile touched her lips. "Evan," she whispered, her voice soft but clear. He exhaled shakily, overwhelmed with relief. "You scared me. I thought I lost you." She touched his hand, her glow shimmering faintly under her skin. "You saved me." "No," he said, shaking his head. "We saved each other." Lyra glanced around the broken lighthouse. The bent railings, the shattered windows, the cracked stone. Then she looked toward the ocean, where the glowing particles of Harlan had finally faded away. "It is over," she whispered. "Yes," Evan said. "It's over." But Lyra's expression changed, soft, thoughtful, almost sad. She placed her hand over her heart, then on the window. "My people," she said slowly. "Far, far from here." Evan nodded, understanding. She was alone on this planet. She had no ship, no way to return home. The storm had brought her from deep space, carried by the creatures that hunted her. That storm was gone now, and with it, her path back. "You don't have to go anywhere yet," Evan said gently. "You can stay here. At least until you're stronger." Lyra looked at him with surprise, then warmth. The glow on her skin brightened, spreading across her cheeks like a soft blush. She touched his chest lightly and nodded. "I stay," she whispered. Evan helped her stand, her legs still weak. He guided her outside to the balcony. The morning sun touched her skin, and her markings glowed brighter than before. She stared at the ocean, the same ocean that had tried to drown her, hide her, chase her, and finally free her. The sea was calm now, smooth and clear. But deep beneath the surface, something tiny rippled, distant, gentle, not dangerous, but mysterious. Evan placed a steadying hand on her back. "What is it?" Lyra smiled faintly. "The sea remembers. It always remembers." Together they stood on the broken balcony, watching the peaceful horizon. The lighthouse, damaged but still standing, shined weak morning light. A new kind of light, a mixture of human effort and alien hope. The battle had ended, but something new had begun. A strange friendship, a new life, a bond between a man of the lonely sea and a woman the ocean itself had tried to keep.